Imagine you woke up in the morning and this was the front page that you saw in the newspaper. WPP hit by ad spending squeeze as digital disruption gathers pace. Now that did actually happen on the 24th of August, and many of you would have seen it. And those of you that work in marketing or own a marketing agency or in the marketing ecosystem should be very, very unsettled by that news. When the world's largest advertising company uses the D word, disruption. Sir Martin Sorrell is a smart man. He's made his fortune buying and selling companies, and he is now putting the D word on the front page of the Financial Times. But if we look at the future, often we would actually employ the role of a futurist. And one of my favourite futurists is Arthur C. Clarke. And in researching this presentation, I dug up an interview that was done with an Australian journalist in 1974, where the journalist simply asked him, what can we expect in the future? Let's take a look.
Well, with that movie, 2001, you're projecting us into the 21st century. I brought along my son Jonathan, who in the year 2001 will be the same age as I am now. Maybe he will be better adjusted to this kind of world that you're trying to portray.
The big difference when he grows up, in fact, if we wanted to wait for the year 2001, is that he will have in his own house, not a computer as big as this, but at least a console through which he can talk to his friendly local computer and get all the information he needs for his everyday life, like his bank statements, his theatre reservations, all the information you need in the course of living in a complex modern society. This will be in a compact form in his own house. He'll have a television screen like these here and a keyboard, and he'll talk to the computer, get information from it, and he'll take it as much for granted as we take the telephone.
I wonder though, what sort of a life would it be like in social terms? I mean, if our whole life is built around the computer, do we become a computer-dependent society and computer-independent individuals? In
some ways, but they'll also enrich our society because it'll make it possible for us to live really anywhere we like. Any businessman, any executive could live almost anywhere on Earth and still do his business through a device like this. And this is a wonderful thing. It means we wanted to be stuck in cities, we better live out in the country or wherever we please and still carry on complete interaction with human beings as well as with other computers.
Now, I think Arthur C. Clarke got it pretty right. He predicted that we would have a terminal in our home, we could work from home. He predicted the societal impacts, that there will be an issue when we're huddled around a computer. What he didn't predict was the iPhone. So he was sort of 40 years out, and if he'd been maybe 30 years out, he would have predicted the iPhone. But you haven't got 40 or 30 years to make your business decision. You haven't got 30 or 40 weeks. You might have 30 or 40 days. So what I'm going to do is I'm a practical futurist. I want you to leave my session this morning and think about sessions this afternoon where you can actually take away things I've spoken about and implement them tomorrow or next week, because I think we need to have some practicality in this view of the future. But if we look at three well-known brands, these have all been completely destroyed by disruption. These companies were not able to see far enough ahead to see how conditions would change in the market and were not able to adapt. And in fact, 52% of the Fortune 500 have disappeared since 2000 because of digital disruption. Because we know what happened. Blockbuster, we now watch it on Netflix. The Kodak moment is now the Instagram selfie, and I don't know anyone that owns a Nokia phone. It's all about Apple. They've been massively disrupted in only the last few years. So the question you're probably asking yourself is, well, why does this happen? We know that technological advances are going to impact us, but why are the conditions in the market rife for that front page to actually impact what's going on? I think there are three reasons why disruption happens. First of all, there are high profits to be made. So let's look at the London taxi industry. The barrier to entry is you've got to learn the knowledge. I saw this interesting documentary about people going through the knowledge. And on the weekends, if you see people riding around on motor scooters with a clipboard in front of them, they're learning the knowledge. It takes 3 to 4 years to learn every street in London. That's a huge barrier to entry. Yet in comes an upstart like Uber that puts it all on an app. And so those high profits are eroded overnight. And we could say the same thing about the movie industry, about the hotel industry. The second reason disruption happens is because of their new technologies. The fact I can pull out my phone and it knows where I am and it knows my credit card and I can book an Uber taxi straight away shows that this is allowing your industry, these other industries, to be eaten into. And thirdly, consumers expect it. For years now, I've been able to choose the seat on my airline before I got on the plane. More recently, I can choose my hotel room at a Hilton hotel, and I can actually now go up to the door with my mobile and unlock it. That saves me every trip about half an hour of not waiting in line for everyone else to get their key. So when you've got these three forces colliding, this is when industries start to be disrupted. But whole industries are being disrupted. You're not alone. The taxi industry is not alone. I saw this great chart from Deloitte that looked at what they call short fuse big bang. And they say basically along the bottom line there, what's the time that we're going to be disrupted per industry, and what's the impact? And the one that we need to look at is the short fuse big bang top right. Let's see if anyone's represented here. Retail, ICT and media, finance, professional services. Wow. Professional services are in the short fuse big bang quadrant. But I've got another shock for you. That chart was from 2014. It has already happened and it's happening today. Disruption is happening everywhere. Who here uses WhatsApp? Most people. Anyone know how many WhatsApp gets sent every day? Someone yell out a number. 2 billion. Nice try. Try 64 billion. Every day on one app, on one network. Anyone have a guess at how many SMS messages are sent on every single network around the world every day? 20 billion. That is disruption on a massive scale from one app, from one company that has basically decimated the telecommunications industry and their SMS revenues. Time for a quiz. This is an easy one. World's largest taxi company owns no vehicles. That, of course, is Uber. Now, I'm not going to give you the usual Uber story because last week they got in a bit of trouble. Now, I put a post on LinkedIn questioning why the chief is weighing in on a trip. So Friday this all happened. If it was me, I would have been on the first plane to London to placate my three different constituents. First of all, my drivers, who are upset about their job. The 3.5 million people that use Uber would like some reassurance, and TfL would like a chat. But as of the FT yesterday, Dara is considering coming over. But Uber has had to pivot and disrupt themselves many times. Few of you may know that Uber started as a limo app, a limo ride-sharing service. Travis and his mate were at an event in Paris called Le Web, and they thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually call up a limo and they could come and collect us? And the first iteration of Uber was Travis and his 5 Mercedes Black S-Series in San Francisco, and you had to ring him or text him to get the Uber to come to you. Only by pivoting into UberX and having a broad range of transportation options were they able to survive. Now, they'll get through this. Uber have litigation built into their business model, and this has happened in other countries and other cities, and they'll be okay. So don't delete your Uber app just yet. World's largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. That, of course, is Airbnb. Anyone know how they got their name? Their first business model, I kid you not, was to have homes that had an air mattress for rent. And the guys that dreamt it up thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could match people who wanted to share our air mattress? After a while, they looked at the addressable market and thought, in the US, there aren't a lot of people that have an air mattress, and so maybe we need to diversify and actually pivot into a broad range of properties. Last one. World's largest media producer owns no movie theatres. Netflix. Netflix used to be a DVD mailer service. A few of you may have used it. And when the technology got to speed and when consumers got used to it, they said, no, I want to stream that. But again, Netflix had to pivot. Interesting story, when Kevin Spacey pitched House of Cards Season 1 to Netflix, he said he needed $100 million. And they said, yeah, you can have it. Because they had the data. They knew what sort of people liked Kevin Spacey genre movies, the director. They knew they were on a winner. The business model was they needed 525,000 subscriptions to recover the $100 million investment, and they got 17 million. That's disruption on a massive scale. Now, if we're going to look at the future and disruption, you're going to need some new skills. You yourselves, as well as your teams, and you're going to want to attract people with these different digital skills. And actually on Tuesday, I spoke at an event at Aviva where I went through these new digital skills that are required. This is a hot topic. People want to know what are the things that they need to know and how do they augment their own career. And artificial intelligence is in the news, and I know you've got some speakers later on talking about AI, and I came across this a couple of weeks ago. The CEO of Deutsche Bank basically said people in his organisation that were performing the role of robots would be replaced by robots. Pretty inflammatory. And I actually dug up the 60-second clip where he said this. Let's take a look.
When you said that you do have some employees now who are acting as robots,
yes.
How do you think the employees felt about that comment?
I think they know that. And the opportunity that we always talk about internally is upskilling the job, making jobs more satisfying. People who are just mechanically moving paper and numbers around don't have a very fulfilling job, and the career prospects there are not as attractive as they would be if we were able to automate a lot of that production, and then we can add a bit of thinking and a bit of creativity to the role.
How many jobs ultimately, though, do you think are at stake?
It's very hard to say. And that's not avoiding the question, it genuinely is. We need to increase the number of people who face clients and counterparts and external stakeholders, and reduce the number who are focused internally, producing numbers, calculating outputs. For the whole sector, it will be a lot of people over the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, I wish there were more people like the Deutsche Bank CEO that told it like it was. But this is a wake-up call for yourselves. There are things in your businesses, in your supply chain, that could be automated. I'm not suggesting for a moment you get rid of all the people, but you need to give them high-value, skilled jobs. This is not new. The last revolution was all about the internet, and on Tuesday I had a room full of millennials, and I talked about when you used to type a letter and you literally had a carbon copy, and I said the CC on the email, that means carbon copy. You would then take a copy and file it, and then 2 or 3 days later someone might respond to your letter. Nowadays, you know you get it straight away. The revolution before that was the computer revolution, and there's a fantastic movie called Hidden Figures that talks about the NASA's pitch for the moon. And they were using people that they called computers that were able to calculate the trajectories. And they realised they needed to calculate these things faster and more accurately. So they went and got a big mainframe computer. But they then realised they needed someone to program the computer. So the computers started programming the computers. And their jobs weren't lost, they just reskilled. And they then got people on the moon safely. You're going to hear a lot of buzzwords today. In fact, you're going to see a lot on the screen now. I'm not going to go through them in any great detail. But this should also be a wake-up call. If there's anything on that screen that you don't understand, I don't want a show of hands. I want you to hit Wikipedia and start researching some of this. And then looking at how it will impact your industry, your role, and your company. Because everything on that screen is impacting your industry now and into the future. And I showed the same slide on Tuesday to an audience of insurance people. And as now, lots of people are taking photographs to say, okay, I better go and research some of this because I'm not quite sure what they mean. It's okay. I didn't know what some of them meant a few years either. But I went to understand the context of how these things are going to impact my business. Let's look at one, blockchain. We hear about blockchain, we hear it as a cryptocurrency with Bitcoin, and you might say, well, how does that impact our industry? I think blockchain is a sleeper across all industries. If we call blockchain what it is, it's a distributed ledger. It is one truth that is sent around the world and is secure. Think about in your business where you need to look at contracts. You need to have a version of the truth that you can call on at all times. Who here knows about GDPR? If any hand is not up, you are in deep doo-doo, because next year GDPR will impact you. So in one hand, you're going to go, this is a nightmare. Weatherspoons have said, this is all too hard, we're going to delete our email database. I see GDPR as a massive opportunity. Let me explain why. Part of the regulation means that I can now contact one of my suppliers for information they hold on me. That's fair. Importantly, they have to send it back to me in a machine-readable format. So, what about if the not too different future, you pay me to advertise to me? I run a blockchain that has my preferences on it and the companies that I want to deal with. So let me give you an example. I bank with HSBC. So I have a data broker that's an artificial intelligent robot on my account. It goes off to HSBC and say, hi, I'm working on behalf of Andrew. I'd like the last 3 months of transactions. Okay, thanks for that. Let's look at all the companies that I dealt with. I'm going to again train my digital broker to go off and do deals, electronic real-time deals with all of my suppliers. I will never go to a price comparison website again because my digital broker will talk to other digital brokers to do real-time contracts within set ranges. And when I say this, or when I said this 2 or 3 years ago, people would laugh me off the stage. You will be paying me to have access to my personal data, because we don't realise what our data is worth. There's an interesting stat here from a couple of years ago. All of these websites, this is the value that we have to them personally. So on LinkedIn, I'm worth $69. I'd like a cut of that, thanks. Facebook, 158. Because when the product is free, the product is me. And if you look at all those websites, you're going to say, hang on, I'm not getting any of that. I think in the future, one of the disruptive technologies will be blockchain, where consumers control their data, and GDPR enables that. So rather than thinking of it as a headache, think about it as, how do we get close to the customer? Because if they trust us, they're going to give us more information. And an insurer loves that. Because if I say, I'm going to give you some of my fitness information, I'm going to give you some transaction history when I travel, because I want you to electronically give me a better deal, I think that will happen. But for all of this to happen, we need a thing called digital diversity. I'm a huge advocate of diversity on boards and diversity in the workplace, but there is a missing piece. Most boards out there don't have people that can see things digitally. What you need is a board and a management team, and this goes for all Fortune 100 companies as well, that is a truly digital board, not like that, more like that can see the world through a digital lens. And you need two. If you have one digital non-exec director on a board, they're going to go, Andrews, he's a digital guy, just, he doesn't know. You have two, so they back each other up. Because what I'm sick and tired of hearing about boards going to the west coast of America, doing the Facebook tour, the LinkedIn tour, coming back really energized, we're going to be digital, and then going back into the normal flow of work. You need every board cycle someone who's seeing the company through a digital lens, that understands those masses of words, that can apply them into your industry. Now, we've got this far without mentioning the M word. We have to mention millennials at a conference. It's a contractual obligation. But I used to have a different view. I thought millennials were actually given a bit of a hard time, that we stereotyped them, we put them in a demographic, we said they were different, and I thought that was unfair. But more recently, I'm going back to my original thinking. I saw this post on LinkedIn a few days ago. Someone said, I'm consistently amazed at how many applications I receive from university grads looking for their first ever taste of work. Now, I don't know about you, but I had a lot of part-time jobs when I was at school and then university. So when I went into the workforce, I knew what it was like. And there's another futurist called Simon Sinek who talks about millennials, and he thinks that millennials are the way they are because their parents tell them how wonderful they are and they can do anything. And they get into work and they realise they can't do everything, and they're not wonderful, they're one of many. And I think those that have had a part-time job and have had the hustle and bustle of learning to integrate with a workforce are far more prepared. So I think millennials do actually have some work to do. But there was an interesting study about the different types of tribes at work. Korn Ferry did a study looking at leaders for digital transformation. They said there are two types. There are the going digital. Most of us in the room are going digital. We know how to influence at a high level. We know how to get things done. We know how to get things approved. But we're not as hot on this new digital technology. You also have the born digital. Born with an iPhone in their mouth, they live and breathe all of this stuff. But they're not as experienced at managing up and getting things done and presenting to a board. So recognise you have the two tribes and they need to work together. And you need to make sure that your teams have this digital diversity by having a diversity of thought on everything that you do. I've done this myself. I've actually brought millennials into client meetings. Now, normally you'd say, why would you bring a 25-year-old into a senior meeting? Well, I want to have a diversity of thought. I want them to understand that I'm bringing new thinking. And it challenges you because you have to disrupt yourself. And this is one of the best ways to do it. Now, when we're talking about millennials and all those sort of things, we're talking about new ways of working. We need to talk about this whole thing of the gig economy, which just isn't about Deliveroo or Uber or whatever. It's a changing way of work. A lot of you may want to take a career break, and when you come back, you may not want to do a 9-to-5 job. You may want to rent out your expertise to whoever's the highest bidder. And when these blockchains come about, there will be digital contracts. I'll basically put my availability out there, and my digital broker will go and book up my time. I won't need to make lots of phone calls. And so we need to be aware that where we work and how we work is going to change, and you need to be adaptive to that as well. Because I want you to think about people as brands, not bodies. We are all brands. I want to talk for a moment about brand you. You as an individual in an organisation, but also the collective intelligence of your organisation. And I think this is a very, very powerful notion. I think Daniel Priestley will be talking about key person of influence in one of his sessions. I encourage you to go and attend that. Because there's the old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know, but I think it goes one step further. It's who knows what you know. Now, why am I here today? Because Richard Chaplin was introduced to me by someone, and through osmosis and serendipity, I'm here today. Because of my personal brand. And after this event, you will talk about me positively or negatively, and you will talk about what I could bring to the table and what my brand meant to you. And you should be celebrating the fact that you all are personal brands. But I think if we're going to talk about branding and social, we need to understand also that social and social media is a bit of a language. Now, many of you probably never met before. We've had coffee, and after the break, we'll have a coffee out there. I want you to do this exercise. I want you to go up to two people having a discussion, and I want you to stand next to them and see how long it takes for you to be invited into that conversation. Now, the only reason you'll be invited in is if you have something of value to say. I did this around the world, it's a bit of fun. So once there were a couple of people talking about astrophysics, I stood there patiently, and 7 minutes later I worked out what I could say to add value and get into the conversation. It was quite awkward sort of standing there for 7 minutes while they were chatting, but I thought I'm going to persevere, there's a way in there somehow. But just try that. The alternative is I rush in front of the two of you, I physically stop you seeing each other, and I tell you all about my company. That's called advertising. It doesn't work on social. And I can think of no better way to explain how not to use social than this 60-second clip.
Hi guys. Hiya. Can I be your friend? Can I be your friend?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All my friends have got like 1,300 friends. I've only got 99.
1,000 friends.
Because it's cool to have a lot of friends. Isn't it good to have?
Loads of friends. You just need like 4 or 5 good friends.
Do you want to maybe look at some photos of like me with my mates, and maybe you'd like want to be my friend more? If I showed you some pictures of my life, it's really cool. You'd be a bit more interested.
No thanks.
Sorry, I just poked you. This is my friends, like, playing this really cool game. You don't show any of your photos to strangers. What's wrong with you? Can I poke you?
So clearly it's a bit of fun, but guess what? You laughed at exactly the same spot that 200 other audiences have laughed at around the world. I've shown this nearly 200 times to about 35,000 people. Doesn't matter what country, what language, they all laugh at exactly the same spot. Because you are nervously laughing, and here we're doing that. I predict about 4 of you will come up afterwards for a link to that video so that you can show your boss what we're doing wrong. There's a nice little end note to this. I show this video all the time, and actually a couple of years ago in London I showed this to a bunch of marketers, and on the weekend I got a tweet from Joylan, who's in the video. He said, "Andrew, I hear you use a video of me all the time. Can I be your friend?" So there are benefits of being out there. So I want to talk for a bit about influencer marketing. I've deliberately put consumer influencers up. These are actually influencers from Australia. I know I've got a B2B audience, and it is very, very different. But what we can learn from is all the mistakes that are being made with consumer influencer marketing. Now, I'll just give you some credentials. Before IBM, for 3 years, I was the CEO of a company called Cred that competes with Clout and looks at social media influence. So I got to understand the psychology of influence. I can sniff non-influencers a mile away. And I became an influencer, so I had brands attracting to what I was doing. So I think I know a little bit about this, and especially in the B2B space, this is an area that I'm going to talk about that you should also be looking at. This is a slide that was put on a conference by a company called Tribe. What they do is fantastic, but the way they prove success was, this was a thing for Nestle, I think. They wanted people, or for Nutella, they wanted people to post shots of Nutella on bread or whatever. So they spent £7,000. They had 37 creator posts. Is that good or bad? They had 2 million social outreach. That's rubbish. They basically multiplied the potential people that could have looked at it if they were on Twitter all the time. They had 21,000 likes, and it cost 33 pence per engagement. And Jules Lund, who runs Tribe, he's an Australian radio guy who's set this company up. I called him out on Twitter. I said, "What was the return?" "Oh, we don't talk about that." I don't know about you, but you've got to sell stuff. And I was at a conference last year in New York, and Kevin Plank, who was the CEO of Under Armour, spoke. And he had a shot on the screen of his whiteboard in his office, and it simply says, "Don't forget to sell shirts and shoes." You've got to sell stuff. It's very nice to have lots of likes and everything else, but I'm a pure marketer. I'd like to see the impact of what I was doing. Now, it's getting harder and harder to measure. But in the B2B space, you can put measures in there to actually understand the impact of whatever you're doing. And guys like Casey Neistat, amazing. He was on a flight on, I don't even know the airline, that's how good the branding was. He got an upgrade and he did a video blog. He's a video blogger now employed by CNN. That sort of stuff is gold. It wasn't set up, it wasn't staged, it's because people actually like to talk about what they're doing, and so you can do that. This is my favourite. This is one of the Kardashian. Let the Lord be with you. You can see here what he posted. He basically cut and pasted what he got from the agency. Here you go, at 4 p.m. EST, right the below. Keeping up with a summer workout with my... Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. That's just wrong. The Economist, I think earlier this year, did a study, again this is for consumers, on what influencers get paid. This is a really great industry. You do essentially nothing, you put a few things on social media and people pay you. No attribution, this is cool. I'll be in that, and that's what's happening. So let's look at all the mistakes being made in consumer influencer marketing and don't make them in B2B. And finally, this is a guy called Chris Burdell. I actually met him in Melbourne. I was doing a talk about influencers in Melbourne. He saw that I was speaking, we had drinks, and he told me the whole backstory about how influencers all game the system and they go and buy followers, and it's a nightmare. And it's a bit scary, and you can buy followers if you really want to, but I don't suggest that you do. What we need though is attribution. So this is Instagram now saying there's a shop now button. So what I want to see is rather than influencers getting paid £1,000 to post something, they get £100 and they share on the upside. If you really have influence and you really want people to look at what you're promoting, there should be some attribution. When I look at some of these Instagram posts that say, "Dope bro," why aren't they saying, "Where do I buy this?" Because it's just rubbish. So don't do that. All of you have influencers in your own company though, and you already pay them. They're called employees. And so what I'm going to talk about is the notion of employee advocacy. Why pay an influencer tens of thousands of pounds when you have people on the payroll? And you might go, well, not everyone is like a Casey Neistat or the guy from the Kardashians, but they all have a story. And if you're going to disrupt what you're doing, if you're in a professional services industry, you're selling people, and people buy from people. And in the digital age, you can have a digital first meeting before you even go anywhere near the client, and vice versa. Now I know a few of you have already looked at my LinkedIn profile, some people have looked at my keynote. You wanted to know what you're going to get, and some of you will do that afterwards. Now I may never meet you, but my digital first impression is what counts. So you can have all of your staff having that digital presence regardless of what they do in the organisation, because they have a voice and they have actual stories about what it's like to work there. But what I don't want you to do is just do a please retweet this. Here's the latest press release, push retweet. No, they won't do it. Because if you're selling engineering consultancy and my thing is surfboarding and all my friends are interested in my surfboarding stuff, it's going to look very strange. It's got to be authentic. So it's not for everyone. I know our friends at Pasali are here and they have a great tool to do that, but it is a cultural change to have people to do that. And I was asked last year to go to New York to speak to a bunch of IBMers about what I did with my personal brand and how I could be an employee advocate. And the question they always push back with is, I haven't got time. I've got fee earners out there, they're partners, they're managers, they're busy generating business. And when I said what I'm about to say, they scribbled down a number. I said, my personal brand is worth $10 million a year to IBM. They went, well, how do you... Incremental pipeline, new opportunities where they couldn't get to. And they went, okay, that's interesting. You can add another 10 million a year individually. Imagine if we could multiply that across our... But it is tough. I guarantee you, you'll go back to the office and you'll say, this crazy Australian said we should be doing more stuff, and the partners are going to go, nah, not for me. But if you could say it's worth 10 million, maybe I'm interested. Because it's selling without pitching. That's the trick. How do you sell your services without saying we're the most amazing company in the world? We all do it. We're going to be pitching today whether we like it or know it or not. I found this great cartoon from my favourite cartoonist, Tom Fishburne. No child's ever asked this, Daddy, instead of a story, can you read me some branded content? So it's got to be real content, not this crafted stuff that again is going the way of the influencers. So just be aware of that. But I think that digital eminence is the gold standard for any employee advocacy program. Now, you've got employee advocacy that's quite broad. You're wanting all the staff to be involved. The top 1% of your firm are the ones that will have the real eminence. They are already well known, but people can't find them. So how can you amplify their voice, get them out there, get the marketing push behind them so that they can shine and they can actually bring in more business? So I'm sure all of you use this little website called LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is a goldmine for this. And I love this feature called Who's Viewed Your Profile. It's reverse stalking. It's my guilty pleasure. Every day I go and see who's been looking at me. So I went through this yesterday to look at who's looking at me. I spoke at a conference she was at. I haven't spoken to Jit for years. Lauren left IBM. I'm not sure what she's doing. It's kind of cool to reverse engineer why they're looking at me. So I know there'll be some people today, maybe right now, looking at my profile. It's a little tap on the shoulder. And so before I go and see a client, they know that I've been looking them up. And the digital first impression has been set. But LinkedIn allows you to go further. So I can have great profile pages. LinkedIn allows you to put content there. The back of the room, there's a camera filming me that I own. So I then own that bit of branded content that I can put on my website. It actually breaks it up and you can click on there and see what you're going to get. You can put pictures, white papers, videos. Everyone in your firm can start to sing about what you do. I've been doing a little experiment the last month, so I thought there was a LinkedIn allow you to blog. They also allow you to do a status update of 1,300 characters. It's like a long tweet. And I set myself a challenge. Could I, every working day, post some content that was real-time and relevant? So it wasn't scheduled. I get up in the morning, and by 9:15, I will post something that's relevant. And I then looked at the analytics to see how did it resonate. So this was on Monday, I got 1,900 views. This was the video that you saw, 1,500 views. This one wasn't so popular about email hacking, 325 views, but this one was a real singer. I saw a job description on LinkedIn that said Senior Principal High Touch Success Manager, and I thought, that's a bit strange. And 18,000 people agreed with me. Now, behind all this is an algorithm. So LinkedIn is seeing what content resonates, is this person getting engagement, and you can actually start using the algorithm to your benefit. So it also put me in a rhythm. So every morning, what's concerning me? So this morning's post was about today's talk. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to give some tips. And so you're getting that free of charge. Others have to actually read it. So I want to give you some things to think about next week. So the practical future is you have to leave my talk with something you can do. So let's go in reverse order. I think you need to think about your advocacy program, but don't let it be a click to retweet. Think about it seriously, because once you engage people, they've got to be invested. But if you are a professional services firm and you have fee earners out in front of clients and they're knowledgeable and they're known, you can rise above the noise and be above all of your competitors. Think about the digital skills that you need. Think about that word cloud of jumble of words. If those don't make sense, go and find out. A lot of the talks today will also be about some of those things that we've spoken about. Think about having digital diversity throughout your organisation. You need to actually look at disrupting what you're doing already, otherwise someone else will go and do it for you. Because I think to get digital, you need to be digital. You need to play with this stuff. You need to break it. I joined Twitter in 2007, and when I did, I thought it was the biggest waste of time, but everyone was talking about it. How do I use it to my benefit? Same with LinkedIn. I joined in 2004. My boss at the time sent me a link. I thought, this is a pyramid marketing scheme. I live and die on LinkedIn. So I've learned how it can actually be useful in my world. But you've got to disrupt or be disrupted. Thank you very much.